Hello and welcome to another episode of the HappYness Helix podcast. We have a guest today, another person that I've known for 40 plus years from school. There are two kinds of students that go to school. Two kinds of people that go to school. The first one is actually a student who learns. The second kind is people like me who go there because they don't want me at home and I'm supposed to go to school. So the guest that we have is one of the former kind, a real student and a person who is today professor and head of the department of a very prestigious department in one of the most elite institutions of education in India. The beauty about this person is, and I say this with complete conviction, is that he remains a student. He is the professor, and in our school groups, there are a few other professors as well, but this is only one person who's referred to as the prof. And he remains a student even today. It is my pleasure, privilege, honor, an absolute delight to have Mouli, as I call him, Professor P. Chandramouli, head of the Department of Mechanical Engineering at the Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Madras. Mouli, welcome. Absolute pleasure to have you here. And I'm looking forward to doing some of what you do with other people, hopefully on camera, which is to just, without you knowing, slip a few things in, right? And my goal today will actually be to flap the unflappable prof. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Cheenu. I'm extremely happy. And, I have been in front of the camera purely for teaching. So this is a different, experience in terms of coming up for a podcast for the first time. So looking forward to it.
It is teaching as far as I'm concerned, because I was very keen to have you here as a guest, Mouli. Primarily because I think now is the time when the competitive exams and all of those things will start for the year 2024. And there are children who have been preparing for it, some of them starting from grade 6 to get into the IITs or, institutions of higher learning, premier institutes. And one of the reasons I was very keen to do this podcast with you is to make this something that parents of such children and the children themselves, I'm putting it in that order, because children 16, 17, 15, 16, 17, 18, they're still developing. And the parents of those children, parents, caregivers, custodians, are the people who can make a great positive difference in the lives of these children. And I'd like them to be able to learn, because I think now, 30 years?
27 years.
27
yes,
years at IIT Madras.
At IIT Madras, yes.
You, after school, you went to IIT.
Yes.
Right? And then you went to Ohio.
Yes.
And did a PhD.
Yes.
And then you worked.
Yes, for about 3 years in industry before coming back to IIT Madras.
And you also had a certain amount of time in Japan.
Yes, as part of my PhD, I spent about 6 months in Japan. Yes.
Lovely. I'm going to touch upon that as well, because I think you shared a few stories of how it is in Japan,
yes,
what the approach is, and how it is slightly different to what we have here. And then you decided to come back here, right?
Yes.
And take up a teaching position with your own,
Alma mater. Yes.
Alma mater,
Yes.
right? IIT Madras. First question, why?
Yeah, very good question. I think this question has been asked probably, people have stopped asking now. This was, when I came back in 97, that was the first question. Why did you come back? There were several reasons, that triggered the coming back to India. The first thing is that although I was in industry, one of the things that happened is, having done a PhD, I really wanted to stay connected with technology. And in a couple of years, I realized I was rising up the ladder and doing more management than technology. So I quickly realized that industry is probably not where my career is, even though, over the years, industry has been trying to address a alternate growth path for people who are, more technology oriented, don't want to do the management stuff. But I don't think industry has been too successful in that model. Mm-hmm. So given that I wanted to stay in a technology role, coming to academics was, or getting into academics was the basic thing to do. And believe it or not, it was extremely competitive in the US in the 90s. For every single professor position that was advertised, and mind you, in my domain, which is noise and vibration, there would be 300 people applying, all specialized in noise and vibration, competing for a single position in any particular university. So this was the kind of competitive environment. That was number one. I did manage to attend a few interviews, but unfortunately didn't get offers. Then I ran into one of my professors in a conference, and then we started talking. He said, why don't you come back? So then this start, that was in 95. In over a year or couple of years, then it solidified. I said, why not go back and, do the academics sitting in India. And of course, after a lot of thought, moved back here. So that kind of germinated. It was not an instantaneous decision. It took about a year or year and a half before I firmly believed that, okay, I will come back. Of course, my PhD guru wanted me to go to IIT Delhi because he had a lot of connections in IIT Delhi. I did get an offer there, but the fact that family was here in Chennai made me decide to come back to IIT Madras. So I joined in 97 April. So this is now 27 years complete.
Wow.
So as we speak.
97, when most of India, especially technology, people who qualified in technology, they were living in droves.
Yes.
Right? For greener, better pastures. You actually did the reverse.
Yes.
Right? So going against the time. I think you've touched upon this, but I'd like to touch upon a different aspect of this. What was your emotional state when you were doing all of this? Was it a brain, logical, rational kind of decision? Or was it, as they call the heart, when it was emotional, family, I need to be doing this? What was it that was, if you had to choose between the two? I know it would be a combination of the two, as knowing you.
Yeah, you are right. I mean, it is a combination of the two. And it was a seesaw battle between the emotion and the logical aspect of this, because one day you get up and say, am I doing the right thing? The brain kind of starts asking you the thing, what are you going to lose? So, and then of course, as you said, the fact that, so the pros basically is an emotional one, that I can be back with the family. And then, people say, well, but, the institutions and IIT included at that time, from a, let's say, world viewpoint, while we were very good at that point in sending undergraduate students across the seas, we were not very well known for the research that we were carrying out. I'm sure, very good research was going on, but the standing in the global index, I don't think it personally matters, but many people looked at that and said, you're going back to an institution which is, a great institution, but is not very globally recognized at that point of time. Sure. Of course, today we are, we have changed that perception, and we are one of the, most recognized globally for the kind of research that we do. So, but at that point, this was the seesaw battle. I think finally, it was more the emotion that, that I should come back and spend time with the family rather than being sitting in the US. And certainly, of course, the other logical thing that came was, which is part of everybody's thing is salaries were not spectacular. I was going to come back from a private company that I used to work for to a government institution with its set pay scales. Not so, of course, over years it has improved tremendously, but in the 90s it was not exceedingly great pay compared to the corporate or private sector. But as I said, the main motive for me was I wanted to do, stay put in high-level technical areas. And at that point of time, I don't think in the corporate world in India, there was scope for me to come and do that. So that's the other reason I could have chosen. In fact, I was asked by my company in the US whether I would like to take up a position in India. And they were willing to consider it. You seem so keen in going back. Why don't you take up a job in our company? But it wasn't very appealing to me because so I knew that they were dependent on the parent company for all this technology, and I wanted to basically do something on my own, develop some new things. So it was a nice opportunity. I don't think I have one single regret to this day of coming back. So, but I think the emotion finally probably won over the logical part. So that's how I would put that. And you are right in that it was a battle between the two.
I read somewhere, excuse me, I read somewhere that when thinking and feeling collide, feeling always wins. Right? That when the heart and the brain collide, it's always the heart that wins. I read somewhere. In my own life, that's been it's been a tough battle to get the brain to, I say the heart is the engine, the brain is the steering wheel, right? And it's the brake. So I use the energy that is developed by emotion, feeling, and temper it, use it appropriately with once in a while thinking, slowing down and saying, am I doing the right thing kind of thing. A cheeky question. I'm hearing now that most people are coming back. Most people, not lots of people are making the reverse. The brain drain as it was called then, and now the reverse brain drain. As more and more people are coming back. It is a significant, let's say, people of Indian origin population that exists across the world, especially in the United States, especially in the field of technology. But a lot of people are also coming back because they see that India is the place to be.
Correct.
Right. So, cheeky question. Are you going to go against the tide again?
No, certainly not. In fact, I was counseling my son that probably the best place to be is in the next 10 to 15 years is India. Right? So the reason for that reverse brain drain is that there are a lot more opportunities, a lot more exciting things happening. I think we have, the startup ecosystem here in terms of technology, deep tech startups. We are not talking about, standard startups. There are a lot of deep tech startups that have happened over the last several years across the country. A lot of young people are, taking the plunge and moving into these startups. Many are doing well. And also the fact that opportunities are dwindling across the Western world simply because of the way it is in the past few years. The opportunities are a lot more here and a lot more exciting things are going to happen in India in the next 10 to 15 years. And therefore, this is the place to be.
Absolutely.
So you can be rest assured I am not going anywhere.
Thank you. I think also IIT Madras has its incubation cell. And I think almost all educational institutions today have a certain entrepreneurship or an incubation cell, right? And I think I've been fortunate to work with some of the youngsters that you and your colleagues
Yes.
are putting out into the world. And it's been an absolute pleasure working with such youngsters because there is a certain level of intelligence that they are demonstrating. More importantly, I think they're demonstrating a very clear intent and passion to make it work, right? We want to make a difference, right? So
I would add the word bravery to that. So
I agree.
I just look at myself, in their shoes. We could have done that, 30 years ago when we were coming out of the institution. Not many of us. I mean, I'll speak for myself. I don't want to tar my entire batch with that brush. But I guess, it's also a matter of where the society was in those days, right? So 90s. So we are probably more conformal with that. And today I find that the younger generation is very brave. They're willing to take the risks. This is not, going with a startup. Yes, they are very intelligent. Yes, they are very passionate because those two are, ingredients that you need in order to be in this. And the third thing is to take that plunge requires a certain bravery, right? So it's amazing that, so many of them, so much so that today we are saying, we see students saying, I don't want to go and work in the regular corporate world. I want to be either a person starting up something or I want to be associated with a startup, deep tech startup. So that's the kind of attitude that we are seeing in students today. So which is a great thing. So that's...
How would you define deep tech according to you? Because to me, I hear the word deep tech. I have a fair idea because I do work with quite a few technology-oriented people, and I'm a part of a few forums which are focused on technology. And we do hear the word deep tech. But it hasn't been very crystal clear for me as to what is deep tech and what is tech, and when does tech become an enabler? When does it become an end in itself? Right? I think this is something that especially youngsters, the ones who are trying to get into institutions like IIT, if they can get an idea in terms of what are the various options, because there seems to be a certain kind of penchant, I need to be only in this, I cannot be in this. I think in the 90s it was computer science. Yes. I don't know what it is today. You'll probably be better at understanding what it is. But if you can, for me first, and for listeners and viewers, if you can elaborate a little in terms of what you consider deep tech, what is tech, and is there really any difference in terms of being in one or the other?
Yeah, good question. Of course, this is not I am just using the word deep tech because that is what is coined and used in, across probably by the media. My understanding of the deep tech, I may be wrong as far as that is concerned.
I know you're the professor, you can be wrong.
No. Basically,
I can be wrong, you can be wrong.
So the ones that we consider, so the startups that, for example, in our institute, which has been spawned by faculty in our institute, where it involves a little more than the traditional technology. When you say traditional, and I'll speak from mechanical engineering, you go into a factory, there is a lot of technology when you walk into a factory. Today, there's a lot of automation that is there. Forget about even without the automation, you have machines. So that is technology, the making of a machine. So I have, what we call as CNC, which is computerized numerical controlled machines, which will do all the machining. So if I take, it is like kind of sculpting in some sense with a metal, a sculptor. So we are in some sense, now I'm, an artist in some way. So we are, sculpting a raw material into a product, and that is done by these machines. So that is technology, right? So technology, this is manufacturing technology, but at the other end is somebody who has kind of visualized the concept, saying, it's going to be a car or a pen or whatever it is. So the product that is visualized, that is, in mechanical engineering, is a designer who designs this technology. So that is technology at one level. Now then, to give you an example, so let's say, we have, for example, I have laid down pipes everywhere underwater. You have cables today which are running, communicating, internet cables running right through. And you now want to say, okay, so laying that is technology, right? So going down, because that is somewhat standardized today. Maybe when, 50 years ago, that was deep tech, because nobody knew how do I actually, put this underground cable under water and then run it from here to Dubai or whatever it is, right? Because that's how these things communicate. Before, of course, now you have satellites also playing that role. Now someone comes in and says, look, I want to monitor this cable, right? And I can't have deep sea divers going and looking at this every time and then monitoring that cable. So you now evolve monitoring technologies. And for that, most of these evolve from cutting edge research that happens in universities. So, so now I have ways. So I have, let's say today I can use my internet cable for monitoring what traffic, how dense is the traffic? Am I, having big size trucks which are creating the jams, or which are cars, all by getting signals from. So a company that is working on leveraging that, taking those signals, doing the classification and saying, you have a problem because there are too many trucks on this road, I want to regulate this. So that is where, your deep tech comes. Laying the cable is technology. Now, now you're at a level which is above this, leveraging that internet cables, and then saying, I'm going to, process certain things out of that, as an example of a deep tech. So you have underwater robots, underwater submersibles. Development of all these is very high-end technology. These are not things that you would commonly see. So that's the difference. There are a lot of CNC machines today. You walk into any shop floor, you will see. But I won't see ROV, as it is called, basically underwater robots, which do inspection, which find out, whether my ship hull is rusting or not rusting.
Wow.
So, simply by adding cameras and, sensors, and then coming back, giving signals. And so that forms deep tech. That is one. You asked what is hot today. Everybody kind of knows what is hot today. The two things are basically data science and artificial intelligence, because the artificial intelligence has progressed to a point where now everybody on the internet, is trying out something or the other out of artificial intelligence.
Tell us about it.
Yeah. So if at one level, artificial intelligence is simply a kind of extended version. Think about how we process information, right? So your brain is basically taking in a lot of information, and of course, a lot of these things that are stored in the brain because you are very passionate about getting into neuroscience, I know, but the brain has two levels of operating, right? One which is basically automatic. It's able to capture that data, the memories that are stored somewhere, and then do this. And you are able to recognize patterns. Yeah. So the idea behind artificial intelligence is to kind of find a substitute for the brain and say, can a computer do this? Okay. It's a great challenge, because it's not, your brain is a fantastic piece. It's very small, but the capability. The interesting thing is the brain doesn't have the computing power of the machine that we actually make. It's much slower than what you think.
Yeah.
But the architecture is so complex that it can do better than what a computer with all its raw computing power can do. So people are now trying to build basically algorithms by which I can do, I can find patterns. Why do we want to find these patterns? Why do I want a computer to process this? So I'll take an example. Let us say, let's take the field of medicine, for example, right? So you go to a doctor and, we get MRI scans done or some other kind of scan done, X-rays done, whatever. And the doctor is looking at these things and then trying to come up with basically what is the potential problem that you have, right? So he's doing pattern recognition.
Yes.
Based on years of training,
Yes.
that. But there is, even though our brain is very spectacular, the fact that it is not as fast as a computer, so we talk about the equivalent, people are the chess players, how many moves they can kind of visualize ahead of time, which is again pattern recognition, right? So this is where the ability of a computer to, because of its speed, can scan through, a lot more patterns than what I can do in a certain set time, and be able to pinpoint and say, okay, this may be the cause. So basically, pattern recognition is one of the areas where in medicine it is playing an important role, because you gather data. And the thing is that, see, you also, you may not have come across this pattern. For example, a doctor may come across for the first time a patient who has something that he has never seen before. Then it gets added to the memory. So you build that feature also into the computer. Now you say, have the ability to learn. So algorithms are written for this. It's an exciting field. There's a lot of course, people are using this primarily. Everybody is familiar with ChatGPT, which is basically, I look at it as replacing my English essay writer. So nowadays we don't know, we don't know whether the essay is written. In fact, I read a interesting joke cartoon. The student hands it over to the teacher and says, I just asked ChatGPT to write on this topic, and then I added the spelling mistakes to make it look real. So there are certain things that this can do, but that is the what everybody is looking at. But AI has, is very exciting because it can change the way we do engineering. So I look at it as, this can certainly change the way we do engineering, because there is an ability that it brings to look at data in a different way than what we look at. But the key, what people don't realize, is that we need to have good data.
Yeah.
So it is, that is the key part of leveraging this technology, but it is growing. I think in the next 10 to 15 years, we will see a lot of these, develop. The artificial intelligence domain will see a lot more applications. We are now starting to see, can I design? So for example, in mechanical engineering, optimization is a thing. So if you go look at, most of the cars, they're not very different, right? So, and so it is as my friend Jerry would say, the best way to reproduce a design is to copy it. And so you see that there is a certain thought process in most of the cars, whether it is a Toyota, whether it is a BMW, a lot of things are very similar, and that is because the optimization has happened in that fashion. People have figured out, okay, this is the way I have, it has to go independently. And then, of course, they also look, hey, BMW has done this, or Toyota has done this, let me copy that. So as long as you don't infringe any patents, you will be able to copy that idea, right, or steal that idea. But here is where, the ability to optimize in the design stage. I can look at multiple designs fairly quickly, which I cannot do, in a conventional fashion. So AI and data science plays a role in doing something like that. Similarly, on the manufacturing, so one of the things that when we manufacture, of course, people used to have goals. In my company, we used to say 0 defect products in 5 years. I don't think, this was a nice slogan to put on the table. I don't think any manufacturing process in the world today can make 0 defects, but it's a goal that you strive against, right? So 0 defects in 5 years. So the question is, how do I improve my process? At the end of the day is, because defects essentially mean it's a cost, right? I'm looking as a manufacturer to drive my cost down. So if I reject more parts, then I'm paying for it in some way. So here is where, again, looking at your manufacturing process, optimizing that, finding what is really causing these rejected parts, artificial intelligence has a role to play. Today, there is a concept called Industry 4.0. So, you look at the evolution you had. 1.0 was the Industrial Revolution, which was about 300, 400 years ago. And then you have various stages of manufacturing. Industry 2.0 is when Ford introduced basically the, what I would say, large-scale manufacturing, conveyor-type manufacturing facility where, you started to assemble parts on a line, conveyor line. And then 3.0 is probably after World War II, where, some other new technologies evolved. Today, the blending of machines with data, the internet, and this is where, in order to optimize the performance and reduce, the errors in the manufacturing, that is where, we are headed. And AI, along with the ability, IoT, as it is called, Internet of Things, is going to play a big role in the future, near future. And things are evolving so fast. What we think is deep tech today may be, regular tech in about 5 years' time, and something else will come up in the next 10, 15 years. We are very rapidly progressing in terms of new technologies.
So I learned something new today. I've heard a lot of people use the word CNC. I hadn't the foggiest notion. And normally when I come across something, I would actually go and search and find out what it is. And today I learned that it is computerized numerical control.
Yeah, numerically controlled machining, CNC machine.
Okay, computerized numerically controlled machining. Lovely. 2 or 3 questions basis what you said now. Last question that I noted down, I'll start with. AI. Is it actually artificial? Or is it just it's an easy name to give? Because what you're saying, from what I heard from what you said, it's not artificial. It is pattern recognition. It is understanding, making sense of everything that is there. So is it artificial? Or is it better? I'm just asking.
No, again, somebody gave the name artificial intelligence, right? Because when you are trying to build something into a computer, so we are supposed to have the natural intelligence or the opposite of that, natural stupidity, right? So all of that is tied into that. So we are nature's products. And these are products generated by us, which we are now training. The computer is a man-made.
So it's man-made intelligence.
Yes. So we could call it man-made.
Human-made intelligence.
Yes. Human-made intelligence would be probably a alternate, But remember this, the training is being done, all the algorithms are being done by humans. Yes, absolutely.
And we had the famous meltdown of one of the largest companies now, which is in the news, where the biases of the humans programming that AI engine threw out a lot of
people
highly
are
debatable stuff.
Correct. People are talking about responsible AI because, but there is an element of learning that is built into this, which the computer itself is, but again, that algorithm is being built by the humans into this. So maybe instead of artificial intelligence, you can call it as man-made, or better thing is human-made intelligence. So into the machine.
See, one of the fascinating neuroscience, understanding human behavior. So I'm a social scientist in that sense. So when I was accessing some of the data on this, exactly some of the examples that you took, doctors, 2 things come to mind. I remember somebody talking about a neurosurgeon, and this man was absolutely amazing. Apparently, the patient was walking, and he said, this person has a tumor in this part of the brain and needs operation right away. And the patient had been referred to this person for a problem that they had in their pelvic region. And he looked at the person walking the gait and he said, tumor, this part of the brain needs operation within the next 48 hours. Right? And when he was asked to explain how he came up with just, 3 seconds of watching the person walk, he said, look at this gait, look at this is what's happening, this is what's happening, this is what's happening. Obviously a person with 40, 45 years of experience. So this I would call, knowing without knowing, the autonomic nervous system, or the processing that happens without being aware that the processing happens. That's great. Another interesting study that I came across was that in many hospitals now in the US, they've been trying, I think IBM's Watson or such other diagnostic engines, where the reports are put in and the algorithm makes a diagnosis, right? They're finding that, again, disclaimer, this is not to be taken as medical advice or anything against the medical profession, absolutely not at all. That a doctor told me this, that 1 out of 3 diagnoses that they make is incorrect. Sorry, 2 out of 3 diagnoses is incorrect and only 1 out of 3 is correct in terms of diagnosis. So obviously, man-made intelligence, artificial intelligence, algorithm, whatever we call it, it seems to be less emotion-oriented, pure data. This is what it is, matches the patterns, therefore there is this percentage of probability that it is this percentage of probability that it is this, which I don't think a doctor would be able to do. They might be able to do it, but they don't do it that way. We have a feeling that it might be this kind of thing. Another interesting study that I came across, this was in a book by, I think it's called The Happiness Advantage, and Sean Achar, I hope I got the name right, refers to a study. And very interesting, he said, Jello and lollipop sticks. So 4-year-old children were told to think of the Jello while solving a problem. And the ones that thought of the Jello were able to get a better result than those who did not think of the Jello that they'd had at snack time or whatever it is. So he said this happened with 4-year-olds. Their ability to perform better at problem solving and all of that went up when they were looking towards the reward of the same Jello being given to them at the end of it. So they said, will this actually work in the real world? And they started doing an experiment with doctors, first diagnosis. 2 things they found out, and this is what the study says, that doctors are given a certain set of information and they make a diagnosis. Then they are given follow-up information. They found that even though the follow-up information pointed in a different direction, many doctors did not change their diagnosis because they said, I've got it first. I can't be wrong. I couldn't have got it wrong in the first. So they refused to change their diagnosis, or they dug their heels in and said, no, this is the diagnosis. Obviously, the research paper goes on to say that it's not very useful, right? Because if there is data that is being presented which points in another direction, the doctor would be best served to change the diagnosis and alter the course of treatment, etc., etc. The study also says that certain doctors were given a lollipop. These are doctors. They were given a lollipop and said, after this experiment and all of this is done, you'll get the lollipop. Lollipop. Nothing, not some great thing. And the doctors who were given a lollipop, when they were presented with data to the contrary to their original diagnosis, they were absolutely comfortable with changing their diagnosis. The ones that were not given the lollipop or not told to think of the lollipop said, nah, I'm sticking to it. So this brings me to a question on this, right? The first is the doctor who just looks at 3 steps that a patient takes and says, this is what it is, right? And then we have this thing where the algorithm is able to give a percentage of probability of it being this. And then we have this study which says that human beings, that if they have something to look forward to, even if it's a lollipop and it's a grown-up person, they still are more amenable to changing their opinion based on data, right? How do you think all of this is going to be handled by this man-made intelligence thing, the algorithm?
No, they're very, very, on one hand, you have the example of a surgeon who's able to make the right diagnosis because of, as you said, 40, 45 years of experience. I think that is very difficult for the machine to match, right? As you said, subconsciously, right? So it is all sitting there, and those are the things that the brain can access much more rapidly than what the machine can do, because machine has to look for patterns. This gait is not something that it is going to do. It would like to have a MRI scan, because just looking at this. But so that is at one end. The second thing that you narrated means ego.
Yeah.
Right? Emotion, ego comes into that, which is why we are humans, right? So it's interesting that if you manipulate that ego, I'm really surprised what brought their ego down by saying that, you will offer a lollipop, and therefore I become more pliable, I'm more open to suggestions and willing to look and say, okay, climb down my high horse and say, okay, you know what, you are right. This data does seem to point in a different direction. Maybe I should try that with my faculty,
Why do you think I think you should just have some lollipops?
Now maybe I know why in our meetings we are offering food at the end of this, so possibly tell them that, you know what, nice coffee and cake is coming at the end of this, and I want a few decisions to be made. So anyway, but I think these things I don't think can be captured. That complexity of human emotion, and you asked at the beginning about my coming back, which is basically a seesaw between the logic and this. Although we keep saying heart, everything is still happening in different parts of the brain. Although the allusion is to a heart, the emotions are all sitting there. The logical as well as the emotional part is all sitting there. I think today AI doesn't have that, and I don't think that that's something that I will never say no, but it's at least in the foreseeable horizon of say 10 years, I don't see that coming through immediately. So the advantage that AI has is, like you said, that the machine doesn't have emotion, and it is purely working based on logic or data that is available. And therefore, that comes with certain advantages and disadvantages. Doctors deal with humans. So, sometimes the emotional connect is also more important than simply looking at data and saying this is this, this is that, right? So it's a little more complex, but the machine is quite good today. In situations like the second one that you narrated, where I can now improve my accuracy, which is good, because it is scary to note that doctors can make an error 2 out of 3 times, right? And I have read several things where simple surgeries have gone wrong for various reasons because of this decision making, and more importantly, in situations where there is stress, like in an operation theater. These kind of intrusions can be very helpful, because the machine is going to tell you, do this, do this, do this. When you're looking at a robotic surgery, for example, some of these things get replaced, the precision improves, no doubt. I'm sure I don't want to offend skillful surgeons, because you and I have very good friends who are skillful surgeons, and there are certain things they can do which the robot cannot do.
Absolutely.
Right? But the thing is that if you look at it saying that I can remove errors, certainly. But I think the key is, that is where this responsible AI, how far do I use this? Where do I stop with this technology? Where do I rely on my skill? I have been trained for so many years on a skill, right? Where do I rely on that? And this holds for every field, right? So that I think is still not very certain. So it's a very good, by taking these two extremes. So I don't think AI has reached that neurosurgeon level where, it just looks at a patient walking and then says there's a tumor.
I want to put you on the spot. Do you think it ever will?
Maybe not. So, let's look at my own experience, right? So like a neurosurgeon, as I said, I specialize in noise and vibration, right? Anyone who's been in the field observed that, I've been in IIT Madras for 27 years, but my journey started before that, getting into that field. So I would say about 35 years I've been immersed in this. And so in some sense, I'm doing data science and I would say not artificial intelligence, my own intelligence. A lot of things are stored. Every time I visit a factory, I see a problem, so I access this and then I say, okay, you have a resonance problem. And then there's a famous story of von Karman, so of course, very similar to this neurosurgeon story. So von Karman is a very famous physicist. Actually, most physicists and mathematicians, by the way, about 100 years ago, were all engineers.
Oh, okay.
So Gauss was a mathematician, was an engineer. Laplace was an engineer. These are all guys who came up with a lot. We tend to think we see their names in mathematics, but they were all actually engineers. So in fact, I went to IIT Kharagpur and then saw all these things. I said, nice that you have a lot of engineers' pictures in the math department. Math HOD looked at me and they started laughing. Yes, you are right. They're all basically engineers who did math, right? So, von Karman was very famous. He's done wonderful work in the field of fluid mechanics. So he was asked in Germany, he went to a factory and then looked at the machine and then said, fix this. And then he gave his bill for, sorting this out. So they said, you barely spent, 5 seconds looking at this machine and you are charging us whatever. So he said, do one thing. I have given you a solution, it is working, right? Put it back to where it was and if you don't want to pay me. So that brings the point, the ability of a von Karman to be able to look at the machine, see, the machine and say, okay, this is the problem. That's something that I think goes beyond your algorithms and, that's something that the brain can do. I don't think that we have reached a level. You said maybe never. I don't know. I will never say never because we don't know. Who thought 10 years ago, 15 years ago that AI will progress to this point that it is now? It may happen, it may not happen. And we may evolve.
Yeah.
Please note that we have evolved. Our evolution time, of course, is over, hundreds of thousands of years. But if you look at where we were 200,000 years ago to where we are today, I'm sure we will also evolve, right? So maybe we will stay up front in front of these machines, maybe.
What's the name of the person you said? The person who said?
Von Karman.
Von Karman. So that's the origin of the story of tightening the bolt $2.
Yes.
Knowing which bolt to tighten.
Yes.
$9,998. Okay. Lovely. It is actually based on fact.
Yes.
I didn't know that. One more thing that I've learned. You referred to ego when we were talking about doctors not making they made a diagnosis. It's a person's life sometimes. I'm not too sure. Again, I'm not casting any aspersions on doctors. And I think truly great. And we have quite a few friends who are there. Two things I'm going to touch on basis that. One is the ego bit. Specifically with regard to students. In your experience, how much of it are students being pushed, inspired, goaded, threatened to adopt a certain course of study? And how much of it is because, obviously, parents mean well for their children. There's no doubt about it. I always say that because I mean well for Mauli does not mean I will do good for Mauli. My intent might be to best for Mauli, but it does not necessarily follow that whatever I do will be good for you. Because I'm going to be doing what I think is good for you. Only when it's done will we know whether it's actually good or not, useful or not, good, bad, subjective. In your experience, 27 years of being in IIT, I know you shared some anecdotes of where you had to counsel students. You've had to face multiple challenges in terms of how the young people, they go through such turmoil. And some drastic steps are also taken by some of them. And it's never ever a good thing to happen. So I'm coming back to the ego. This is the background. How much of it is, in your experience, that the ego of the parents is what pushes the children or the students to opt for what they're doing?
Yeah, very, very good question. Ego is positive as well as negative. So the unfortunate thing is, where is the line? Because without ego, we won't be what we are today.
Correct.
Right? In fact, without stress, we won't be what we are today. But there is a line.
Yeah.
Right? So there are two things here. When I look at, today, the profile is changed. If I look at when I studied in the IIT system, most of us were from the urban locations. Today, that profile, and it is a good thing, has changed because a lot of students are coming from rural areas, which is great because that, I think it's a good measure that the country has progressed, in reaching out, even though we still continue. I still think IIT is an elite institution, but we are able to get people from a lot more from rural areas. So I'm not sure. So let's look at the urban parent versus the rural parent. I think the motives are very different, right? So the urban parent probably more well educated, where probably this ego, I'm looking at various things and saying, oh, this guy's son has now got into IIT, my son also has to get into IIT, or my daughter has to get into IIT. Sorry for saying my son has to get into IIT, but unfortunately we don't have that many daughters into IIT, right? So especially in mechanical engineering, for some reason people think it's a damn difficult thing to do. So the preference is, if it is a girl, it should go into computer science or electrical engineering, considered more easy for women to do. Absolutely.
Do you think?
No, I don't subscribe to that at all.
And I'm going to interject here.
Yeah.
Ask you for that one piece of inspiring advice, suggestion that you would make, both to the lovely ladies and their parents, that they should look at this as a useful, viable and doable option.
Yes, absolutely. So they just have to go see what my colleague does, Sujata Srinivasan, right? Graduated, she is also came to IIT Madras, and probably in her batch was one of the few doing mechanical engineering, maybe one or two. I have to ask Sujata that. Look at where she is today, right? Inspiring, she has taken it up as her mission to basically develop rehabilitation devices, build wheelchairs at affordable cost, right? So these are great things that she's doing. But more importantly, that she has, in this field, as she has come along, probably has faced it many times that she was the lone woman going through this. So must have been extremely difficult for her to do that. But that's an inspiration. If she can do it way back in the 90s, I'm sure things are a lot more easier for people to do it now. There is nothing in mechanical engineering that a woman can't do.
Lovely.
Right? So, and probably they can do better than what men.
I was going to say that because they're a little more disciplined.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm sure they will do a lot better than what we men can do. And in fact, there are fields where they are different. The way they think is very different from men. And I especially think in the field of design, which I should ask Sujata if that makes a difference that she is a lady. in terms of designing things. The perspective is very different. So they'll bring a lot to the table. There's nothing absolutely in any branch of engineering or science that cannot be done by a woman. So
I would think that, it extends to not just engineering and science.
Anything. I'm just focusing because, what we see, especially in STEM, is that less women seem to prefer coming into this. And the women who do face a lot of challenges simply because, they see a lot more men, and there are barriers that, not only in India, but across the world, the way it is set up, they face a lot more difficulty. Of course, there are a lot of initiatives where we are trying to, make them come in. There's also a mandate by the government that we should increase. So the IIT system, for example, now has 15% of our admissions have to be girls. So we have to ensure that. So that's something that we have been, and it's a good thing, So we see. So fortunately, I see a lot more girls in mechanical engineering when I teach now. And these are, I hope many of these would go on to become technology leaders, and I'm sure they will. But that will happen. But there's nothing, I think parents should know that their children can do anything that they want. The limit is only their thinking rather than anything else. There's absolutely nothing that will stop them other than their own thinking.
Which also brings me to one thing, and I'll come back to the original ego question.
Yes.
Right? I know we went on a segue. We'll come back to the ego. We had our classmate Gauri on for a recording. And he touched upon something, saying that in terms of finding a partner, right, the approaches that young men were taking was very different from the approach that young women were taking. And it sort of seemed to come around to the thought process that they are more, they think a lot more from multiple parameters. They take a lot of other things into consideration, not just what's in front of them, right? I think that's something that all of us will need to learn, right? So in Sanatana Dharma, we have the concept of Ardhanarishwara, which is that there is a feminine in each and every one of us, there is a masculine in each and every one of us. Which predominates is what we are looking at, right? Biologically, there is one, but in terms of our thinking and all of that, I don't think there is any human being that has been born out of a non-woman. I am not aware of it. So, again, I'm not being patronizing or condescending when I say this. To me, women are far more, they're stronger, they're more capable, just because they're disciplined, just because they look at it from multiple perspectives, right? And all my life, I've been just trying to see how can I touch that feminine in me. And the more I touch the feminine in me and able to use it, I think I'm far more effective even as a coach, right? I think when we were growing up, which is the safest spot for us whenever we had trouble? Amma. Right?
True. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It is not anything else, but predominantly. I'm just saying predominantly. So, anyway. So, I'm going to come back to the ego question.
Yes.
But there is an important question that I want to touch upon, and this is very, very important to me, and I hope it is important to people who are listening or watching this. You said, I consider IIT an elite institution. What defines elite?
Well, let us look at what is not elite, right?
Okay.
So there is no barrier to an entry, right? Unfortunately, the IIT system has a big barrier to entry, right? It is very, very difficult to get into the institutions, more so at the undergraduate level, because there are PG programs, we have PhD programs. All of these have barriers. It's not that anybody, that the PhD program is easier to get into than but But the undergraduate joint entrance exam is probably the biggest barrier that you can come across compared to, say, the masters. Masters is also equally competitive, but not to the same extent as the undergraduate program. So if you look at a scale, probably the PhD program, barrier to getting into the PhD program is not as great as what it is to the undergraduate program. And the reason is that, close to a couple of million people or more, maybe I don't know the numbers, take this exam, and then we have only a bare 20,000 making it into the IIT system, right? So that is what is elite. You are shutting off, and we don't even know how many are really aspiring but not taking this exam, right? So I may have a aspiration, but I think it's just the barrier is too high that I'm not even thinking of trying to take a poke at the barrier. So that's the other part. So I don't know. We only go by who is writing the exam, but there may be many who say the barrier is too high, I don't want to try it. I've had relatives who have said that to me, right? My nephews and nieces who said it's too difficult, I don't want to try it. So they may have thought about getting into the IIT. So that's basically what and of course, the reason is because to some extent, see, for a long time, there were only 5 or 6 IITs. And now, of course, there are there is one in almost every state. So which has increased the numbers, but we still admit only about 20,000, right? So one of the ways, and our own institution has also done this, is to say, how can we reach out and make it less elite? So the silver lining of this COVID is the switch to online mode of teaching. So the ability to say that, look, you are not going to be in my class, but I am going to share my knowledge and then make it accessible to all of you. That is one way that we bring down the elite quotient in some sense. And this wonderful thing called NPTEL, National Program for Technology Enhanced Learning, which basically has, I just don't know. I mean, it's grown so much that there are probably thousands of courses that you can take through this NPTEL.
I didn't even know
platform.
Something like this existed.
So
NPTEL.
NPTEL. This is a National Program for Technology Enhanced Learning. This has come as a boon. I would say this has been the IITs, IISc and NIT's biggest contribution to the country has been in democratizing education through this NPTEL program. So we have some of the best teachers recording lectures and putting it online for free.
So you're one of them?
I am one of them. There are but a small speck, and there are thousands of people who have done this. And you see, students in colleges sitting some part of India, say rural Maharashtra or whatever, they can, as long as they have a decent internet connection, can actually listen to those lectures. And in fact, many of the AICTE curriculum now says you could do 1 or 2 of these courses and get certification. We have progressed to a point where you can do these courses, get certification, which is run. The beauty of this certification is that the exam is offline, and we are partnered with a corporate giant in order to run this across so many centers in the country. So there probably is a center which is near you within 40-50 kilometers at most, where you can go write the exam and you have a certificate to show I have done this course, say coding in Python, for example, which is a very popular course. I'm just quoting an example. So these are things, which is now taken up, and there are now online degree programs that, of course, we have pioneered, and many others have also now started offering these online degree programs, which means, people can sit at their home and you are getting now access to the kind of resources that, was, as when I said, elite is now being somewhat, we are democratizing and saying everybody can have access indirectly, right? So even though you're not there, I'm giving you the best of these resources to be able to do. Of course, it's very difficult to do an online mechanical engineering program. So typically these things are, more oriented towards computer science. But interestingly, we have there are programs on electrical things with an offline visit to various campuses, touch and feel kind of thing, so that they do labs, because that's part and parcel of engineering. Cannot be done only with pencil and paper. You need to dirty your hands. So those, we do have a 1 week or 10 days session where that kind of thing happens. So in that sense, this COVID has accelerated that process, because we have realized now. I didn't do any online teaching till COVID struck, and I was completely clueless, So I remember writing to my director and say, what should I do? He said, the least you do is put up the slides and talk. I don't know what you will do, right? So the minimum set that you have to do, because students cannot come to campus, you are sitting there, you have to, give them the lectures. And I have been, for a long time, a chalk and talk person. So, in fact, one of my teachers, gurus from who taught me heat transfer when I was a student, and I was fortunate to have an overlap with him when I joined IIT Madras. So he called me one day and said, "You're spoiling the kids, man." So I said, "What happened, Professor VR?" So he said, I conducted a survey. I said, I want to switch to PowerPoint-based lectures. So somebody stood up and said, "Why can't you do what Mouli is doing? Stick to chalk and talk. You are good at that. Why do you want to show us PowerPoint slides?" But this was, we are talking early 2000 or whatever, when he was trying to say, okay, there is no these, he was trying to, remember, he is my guru, so is probably about 75 or so now. So he said, "You have spoiled all these kids, man."
No, I'll actually button on this one. Yeah, when we were, again, Gauri and I, we were talking, there was this thing about writing, right? And earlier I used to say that writing makes it more indelible, so to say, in the mind and the brain, wherever it is. And I would say that there is data that proves it. Till I came across Shubhaman's podcast, where he was speaking with an auditory expert, speech expert. And then we found out that multiple parts of the brain are involved when there is a writing involved. For the writer, I'm going to give you a different example. I use a lot of, slides in regular programs. But when I'm doing my one-on-one, I find that if I go to the whiteboard and write, as I'm speaking to them, write what it is. Sometimes I have back-to-back 3 sessions, and in all 3 sessions I'm going to be writing the same thing, because people are coming in with the same kind of issues. I find that if I'm writing as I'm speaking to them and get them to write something, answers on the board as I'm speaking with them, they seem to learn, internalize, and be able to use that knowledge much better than if I was to just put up a slide. Even if they don't write, they see me writing. There's a sequence, right? We can do all the slideshows and all of those things. Somewhere, when I write, it seems to resonate better. They seem to imbibe it much, much better. So I think chalk and talk, that's a nice term that I've learned today. The other thing that I've heard about you, incidentally, this is something that I'm going to tell the world. This is from other students of IIT Madras, where when I tell them that I'm Professor Chandramouli's classmate and dear friend, I haven't come across a single person who said anything that is not nice about you. Okay? So, kudos to you. And then they all have a cheeky smile when I say that I know you. And the first 3 or 4 times it happened, I asked them, what is this cheeky smile for? They said, "You know what Professor Mouli will do?" I said, "What? Tell me." So if there is a class that is scheduled for 10 o'clock, right? and there is another professor who's already writing on the board, standing there and all of that. Professor Mouli will come to the classroom where he's supposed to go in at 9:50. And he will wait outside the class at 9:50. At 9:55, he will go and show his face at the door. Because 10 o'clock, his class has to start. At 9:55, if that professor hasn't taken the hint and stopped the class, Professor Mouli will walk in, take the duster and start wiping the board. Okay? He will wipe the board. And that professor will then get the message and they will move out. So I said, wow, I can trust Mouli to do this, right? And then they didn't, hold on. You're not getting away that easy. Then they said something very interesting. 10 o'clock he will start his lecture. 10:05 he will lock the door from the inside. So that anybody who's late, who hasn't come in by 10:05, is not coming in. Is this true?
Okay, good. I don't know who has... Both are true.
Lovely.
Okay. I'll tell you the background behind this. The 10-minute break that is given between classes is meant for the student to move from one classroom to the other. This is unlike a school, right? The student is doing different courses. One may be mathematics, one may be engineering, one may be humanities. The classrooms are in different buildings. The mechanical engineering classroom will happen in one building and then he has to go for a humanities class in another building. The 10-minute break is meant for the student to move from one to the other. People have to respect that.
Yeah.
I have to respect that, right, as a teacher. So when a colleague, so from a student perspective, they have to let the student go at 50 minutes past the hour, right? If they don't do that, the student is getting anxious now because he or she is going to be late to the...
And if that next class is knowledge, the door will be closed.
No, that is, we'll come to that. The door will be closed. Absolutely. So, so that is one thing that, colleagues have to respect that.
Absolutely.
So I show my face to kind of gently tell them, look, it's 5 minutes past the hour. You should have let the students go. And they also should have courtesy to their own colleague. I walk in, I have to gather my thoughts as to what I want to, tell the students today and clean the board if my colleague leaves in, even though we have a big sign there that says, please clean the board before you leave. And that's meant for the faculty and not the student. So, but many, take more time and somebody says, sir, I have to teach them, I have to finish this. There's nothing like that. So I think we get carried away saying somehow we think we are going to teach them all the things. People can learn on their
meaning
own.
of life.
Yeah, the whole thing in a matter of a semester, it's not going to happen, right? So anyway, so that's two reasons. One, I want my colleague to respect my time because I have to walk in, prepare myself for the class. I don't want to waste the students' time and get started. Second, the students need that 10 minutes for them to move from one and settle down to receive whatever they are going to.
Absolutely. They need to do reset.
Okay. The second reason why I say, by the way, I used to close the door. I have changed. And that is evolution of the teacher. I still go and erase the board, but I don't close the classroom anymore at 10:05. The 10:05 closure is basically to bring in a certain discipline in the student, respect that, See, you make a choice. The student is perfectly free in our system to attend or not attend. Nobody is asking him to attend. The responsibility is his, right? He or she makes the choice to come to my class. But if you are going to come to my class, you better be there within 5 minutes. I understand that 5 minutes can be because, they are coming from another place. So my logic is very simple. When I walk in, 5 minutes after I walk in is the time that you're going to get 10% of the class time, right? So you're going to get to walk in. Otherwise, I shut the door. There are students who said, my cycle got a puncture, sir. You please allow me. And they'll come stand at the window and say, I said, no. It happens. But today, it's probably a genuine reason, but unfortunately, you missed this class, right? So, the thing is to basically get them to bring a discipline. Now, so why do they need that? Okay, I'm sure all of these guys are going to go into the corporate world. And punctuality is a very important thing as far as I agree, concerned, right?
Completely.
So if you say there's a meeting at 10 and I saunter in at 10:15, your boss is not going to like it, right? And so this is one way to instill in them, whether I'm sure many of them probably didn't like it, but as I used to tell them,
none of them were upset. No. They said, expectations were very clear. It was crystal clear.
No,
so if it was Professor Chandramouli,
yes, that communication was there. Certainly that communication was there. The first class, the ground rules are very clearly made that, there is, by the way, attendance rules in many of these institutions. And, we used to, I said, I'm bound by the institute to basically follow that attendance rule, right? So, and I said, you can't walk in. Actually, when I was a student, nobody really cared. There were people who walked in. I always used to wonder, why would you want to walk into a class half an hour later and sit there? I mean, unless he or she was didn't wanted to sit somewhere and, oh, by the way, this is a good place. And maybe listening to this guy will make me sleep and I can sleep. So, unless these are the reasons, I don't think you would walk into somebody's thing half an hour late, right? So that's something that I just want the students to be aware of. I'm sure if you had asked them this question while they were students, they probably wouldn't have been very happy. But over time, probably, they have recognized that there is some value to what I have been doing. But this, I still, erasing the board, I still go.
So now you're talking about wiping the board. One of the things that I do when I go and I write on the whiteboard. And, I might have to go to different meeting rooms to be with different people. And I insist a few things. Well, I would take the duster and start wiping. And they'll say, no, I'll wipe it. I said, no. So, leave the room the way you found it is the standard question that I get asked. And I say, no, I want to leave the room the way I want to find it. Right? It's not about me leaving the room the way I found it. If it was a mess, did I like coming into that room? No. I would actually wipe the board. When I was in corporate employment, a fairly senior position, having another fairly senior person reporting into me. And I would do my one-on-ones. And the person walked in with their laptop. And they knew that I was very particular. That start time, end time were both sacrosanct for me. So if it was 10 to 10:45, 10 to 10:45 it was. 10:46 not acceptable. 10:01 not acceptable. So I'd say, I don't care a damn. If we've got a calendar invite at 10 o'clock, you be there at 10 o'clock. Whatever happens, we are completing at 10:45. It's up to you. Right? And don't think that, you can use this to get away with some of these things, because then I will focus only on the things that I need to take care of. Right? No. So once when this person walked in, I looked and they turned their laptop around and I looked at it and said, hold on. And the person said, what? I said, hold on. Please switch off the laptop. I said, what, sir? I said, no. And what, GS? I said, no, stop. Switch it off. So they switched off the laptop. I opened up my desk. I took out a Colin, a glass cleaner, some cloth, all of that. And I said, give me your laptop. I sprayed it, wiped it, and wiped. I'll do it. I said, no. You should have done it. You haven't done it. So I'm going to do it now. And it comes out of your 45 minutes, whatever time it takes. Wipe it, clean the keyboard, turn it over. Took about 10 minutes. Do a proper cleaning, it will take about 10 minutes if it hasn't been cleaned for such a long time.
Yeah, that's...
Wiped it, cleaned it, and then I said, switch it on, polished it, all of that. And the person said, I have learned something. I said, what have you learned? Said, these are the small things that make the difference. So this person went on and said, normally people say that the devil is in the detail. After watching you, I can absolutely say that God is in the detail. Thank you. So I think somewhere, I think it also has a lot to do with not just our families, our background, the culture. It's to do with the school that we went to, where there was a certain specific requirement in terms of discipline, a specific requirement in terms of adhering to time, right? And I don't think, because of, I used to get away with some kind of murder because I used to be on the sporting kind of thing, so I would always use that to be late to school. But I think I don't think you were ever late to school.
No, I was ever late to school, yes.
Like, the model student for many was Mouli. You might not accept it.
Yeah, it was not that I was trying to be a model or whatever. Like you said, it is something that was instilled in me by my parents.
Absolutely.
To respect, if a school is supposed to start at 9:10, I was expected to be there at 9:10.
Not only that, I think all teachers also looked forward to you being in their class because you didn't create trouble. You actually did your job. You were intelligent and you used your intelligence for the right things. I was intelligent and I used it for different things, right? So I was outstanding student. You were actually outstanding in terms of your performance. So I think one lesson, I think this is something that I'm finding in my work with youngsters today. I don't want to sound geriatric when I say this, but I think these are the small things that make a lot of difference in terms of how they can do a lot other things in life. My favorite statement is, how I do one thing in life is how I do everything in life.
Absolutely. Right. Yes.
So I found you to be extremely precise. I've found you to be truly, admirably unflappable. Right? There have been, in the last couple of years, there have been extremely trying situations, events that you've had to go through. And even in all of that, right, I haven't seen you break stride in that sense, right? And you've continued. So I'm going to come back to the ego question. I haven't forgotten the ego question, okay? But I want to touch upon this. There are personal challenges, family challenges, extremely tough ones, right? And even through all of that, I found you extremely pragmatic, practical, and I'm using the word again, unflapped, right? How do you do that? Because, this is the HappYness Helix podcast, right? And like you rightly said, stress is not the problem. Is it distress or eustress? Because without stress, I'm not alive, right? So if I change my perspective, what might be distress to one might be eustress to another, right? And I found this one admirable characteristic in you, that you're absolutely, and it's not that you are humorless. No, my nickname for you is very clearly, therefore, addressing the completely humorous side of Mouli.
Yes.
I'll bring it back to this. These personal challenges, right? Last 2 years, you and I, we've been talking, and even otherwise, I know that you've had your challenges. We've had multiple chats. How do you manage?
Yeah, I think it's a question of not letting the emotions or the distress, as you said, it was there, it is, but trying to level off and say, okay, here is where. So one of the ways possibly is, I won't say distraction, but focusing on what I need to do, right? So, moving away from
so
those
clarity of purpose.
Purpose, yes. So, these things have happened. One doesn't have control over these challenges that you talked about, that I have gone through. One can sit and ask the question, very often we see, why me?
Why me?
Yeah, so I think that doesn't help. So after a point, obviously, I am sure that there have been moments, and it probably hasn't completely gone away, but it's getting fewer. But the question is, we have to move on, with these personal challenges. How do I, these have happened, not under my control. What do I do next? I have certain things to do, both personal as well as professional. So focusing on that has, kind of helped me to stay or find that balance away from and deal with those, challenges.
What I'm hearing is that, I'm responsible.
Yes.
I'm taking responsibility. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
I can't do anything about the cards that I'm dealt.
Yes.
Like Randy Posh says.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't do anything about the cards that I'm dealt, but I can definitely choose to play the hand the way I wish to, and I choose to. Right? And that's what you're demonstrating.
Yes, absolutely.
I want to dial a little deeper on that one. How did you develop that sense of responsibility? Right? All of us, we've learned it from observing caregivers, parents, adults, right? But I'd like to go one step further. I'm interested in knowing how you took that and made it your own, and now that has become the defining principle of how you live life. I can speak for myself. That has become the defining principle of how I live life, right? Much to the consternation of other people, they say, you're not getting irritated, you're not getting upset. I said, if I'm getting upset and something's going to change, great. Otherwise, what's the point in giving upset? My question, therefore, in this is this total, complete sense of responsibility for you and how you live life, right? How learning happened. What is it that you use to make it your own and your guiding principle?
No, I think that, like you said, a lot of inputs throughout life, right? I spent quite a lot of time without my father being around, right? So he was in a transferable job, and the way our arrangement in the family was that we will stay put in Chennai so that our education, because my father was working in fairly remote locations, working for All India Radio and Doordarshan. So he used to be transferred to places where he felt that I wouldn't get the best possible education access in his mind. So the arrangement was always that we will stay put here and he will be there. And of course, we used to go summer vacation or when he will come around once in a way. So a lot of these things. So in some sense, I became the alpha male in the family, right?
Very fairly early in life.
Right when I was in 5th standard, because you go. I'm not sure if a 5th standard kid today. I had to go to the bank. I had to go do a few things that, of course, my mother was equally capable. Not that she was not capable, but then the fact that so she said, "Look, you can take responsibility for these things. I will train you, and then you go do this for me because I'm delegating this authority to you. It's not just." And what is interesting is that in our house, everything was shared. And my sister, of course, will constantly complain about the partition of labor. Why is he doing this and not, you should switch, she will say. So my mother will say, look, he is doing this. You go see another house. There won't be people doing this, right? If you look at our society at that time, the male kids were not asked to do certain things, but my mom didn't have such rules because she was very clear that, of course, the bone of contention for my sister was that she always got to do in her mind the dirty jobs and I was doing all the better jobs according to her. But the fact is, all of us had to do something in the house. So this was it. You talked about women, So this is where I had a larger influence of my mother over several years, and the way she thought was, to help you take responsibility. Beautiful, right? Assigning tasks to you, saying that you go do it. It doesn't matter. So I used to cook. I used to go to the bank. All of this when I was about 10, 11 years old, right? So this is one input. And the second input came after marriage. Again, a woman, right? So these are people who have, whenever I don't want to take responsibility, which often happens. See, this you said, to be able to say that there are times when you don't want to do that. So bringing you back into that, that training has happened, one from my mother and the second from my wife. So these are two people who have played a significant role. Of course, my father also. So one great thing, about him is absolute confidence. He says, look, I remember there's an anecdote. Somebody said, do you know which side of the hostel mess your son eats in? And my father had no clue. So in those days, this side was non-vegetarian and the other side was vegetarian. And we used to get the non-vegetarian stuff on the other side of the mess. So he had no clue. He said, what is he asking? So I said, no, one side is non-vegetarian and he is indirectly asking you, do you know if your son is still vegetarian or he is eating non-veg stuff? So my father, once he figured out, he said, I know my son. So this is the answer he gave that gentleman. So that's the kind of confidence. He never asked me.
Yeah.
So he said no. So these are, so he says it is your responsibility. This is our culture or our social norms. I know, you will make the right choices. So all of these are pointers. So somebody is giving you that, putting you on the spot, saying you have to be responsible. Someone is trusting you, So you have to take that responsibility and not violate that trust. So these are all, I'm just giving you examples, but all of these, I think these three people have probably played a much bigger role in molding various things. And of course, I probably pick up from various people that you come across, right? So, and you're looking at them and saying, what makes them, there are things that I like in them, or admire in them. So what is it? And then you kind of figure that out and say, these are, as you said, people who take responsibility for themselves. That is probably what is, making me feel that admiration or, respect for them. So, and it's a constant process. There are times that you're going to stray from that, responsible centric position, but, that, so like in vibration, you'll always come back to equilibrium, right? So
the V has to come
back to equilibrium. So that is what drives.
Seeing Kaustubh, your son, I can see that, that's what's happening to him as well, what he's been going through and how he's handling it. It's exceptional, sir. Couple of things. I'm going to let you in on one secret. You might have guessed this, but I'll let you in on that secret. Many a time that I would innocuously message you or call you, right? I would have had a message come in from Prabha before. Right? It said that, I think your friend needs your call. That's all it will say. It will not say anything more than that. It will just say, your friend might benefit from your call. That's all. And I wouldn't question anything. I would just say, I'd drop you a message and he'll say, hey, I was also thinking of talking to you. Right? So that would happen. I'm going to take this to all the parents out there and to the youngsters out there to convey one very important message from what Mauni said here. Parents, trust your children. If you want your children to be good children, good adults, be a good adult yourself. It's always do as I do. It's never do as I say. Unless the do as I say is something I've learned, and I learned it from my father, where he would actually call me and he'd say, you know what, this is not useful for you, don't do these things. And I look at him, I'm doing all of those things. Exactly why I'm telling you, don't do it. Right? So if you're not being the kind of person that you want your son or daughter to be, call attention to it. And make it safe for your children to come and tell you absolutely anything. Because most parents, they come in the way of their children's lives by jumping and reacting. Sometimes over-the-top reaction. And then the children, the youngsters, especially when they are in their teens and early 20s, they're still not sorted. Right? And the safest place that they can go to is their parents, and they start worrying about going to their parents because of the parents' reactions and how they make everything about how society will react or how people will talk about them. And I'm saying that that's absolutely a waste of time. Right? I'm going to touch upon one of the topics that you and I we've been speaking about how some students resort to the drastic extreme step. And therefore, I'm telling these parents out there, make it easy for your children to live life with the safety that anything that they are going through, they should be able to come and tell you. Do not judge them, do not react, just listen. Gauri was saying, the most important thing, and I agree, is listen. He was saying 90% listen, 10% summarize. Ask questions, summarize. I agree with that. So I think parents there need to know that they are custodians of the future. And all parents, both of us, anybody who's a parent, they will only want their children to be at a minimum an infinite number of times better than they are. Right? At a minimum.
Yes, absolutely.
I get the paradox, minimum and infinite. I get the paradox, and I'm saying it. Infinitely, we want our children to be better than us. And yet, we don't tell them that they're better than us, that they can be better than us. And if we can just let them be free and tell them you can do anything that a human being can do, provided you're willing to put in the work that is required.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
I think it'll become so much simpler, and they will then take on that responsibility.
Yes.
I think that's what your parents did with you.
Yes.
Right? I'm going to actually go back to one more aspect of you. I don't know if you recollect this, but I recollect this. I was the cricket captain, 12th standard. And Mauli comes to me one day, and Mauli is a wicket keeper. And Mauli is now a lot slimmer than he used to be when he was in school. Right?
Right.
And Mauli comes up to me and he says, GS, do you really think I have a chance of being the wicketkeeper in the main team? Do you remember that? You don't. I know. So I looked at him and said, there's another classmate of ours, Murli Narayan, who's much fitter and slimmer and all of that. So I looked at Mauli and I said, Mauli, I really don't see you. Unless Murli gets hurt or he doesn't want to play, I don't see a chance for you to be the regular wicket keeper. And Mauli, matter of fact, I still remember it like yesterday. Matter of fact, okay. Then I will go to the B team and play as the permanent wicket keeper for the B team. Thank you. No remorse, no question of it. I like the unflappability, the pragmatic approach. Practical. Do I have a chance?
Yeah,
I don't. Thank you. I'll go somewhere else.
Yes, exactly. So, because the fact is, I wanted to play.
Absolutely.
Right? That was the only overriding thing. I didn't want to be sitting there and obviously the guy who didn't play had to, do the scoring. Every boundary, everything, you were given that job. So I would rather, this. So as he says, if this was true, I would have been happy because, I will get a chance to play. And this is what I did. I played
and
for
you
the
went
B team,
to
the B team, and then
Mr. Williams and said, I will play for the B team.
B team, yes. So, and I did play for the B team, and I was very happy that I could play a few matches. Of course, we didn't do too well. But whatever, I got to play the 3 or 4 matches when I was in school, absolutely happy. So the opportunity is more important too. That was more important to me. It didn't matter that I was not in the A team. It didn't really matter to me.
Another anecdote that you mentioned, which again underscores the practical aspect of responsibility and to a certain extent not being bothered about what the world is doing, is one thing that you mentioned last week when we were at the beach, that a colleague came and said, you're not putting in your applications for awards, recognition and all of that, and you're just a lazy person, and that you're not doing the work that is required. You're doing great work where you're doing it, but you're lazy when it comes to showcasing your own achievements, right? And after you told me this, I have used obviously, people who know you have said who said it. But in many places, I haven't said it. But the beautiful statement that you made there was, yeah, thanks to lazy people like me, people like you are able to shine.
Absolutely. See, because the whole world is relative, right?
Absolutely.
There is no absolute. So you say, okay, today Cheenu is better than somebody else, is a comparative statement, right? Tomorrow someone walks in who is better than Cheenu is going to be in the dumps, right? So that fellow takes the seat of Cheenu, right? No? Maybe not.
Please don't wish that for me.
I am not wishing that for you. I'm just saying that, see, we all stand on the shoulders
and I'm with you on this, Molly. I couldn't care a damn what anybody else thought of me or what they're doing.
I know you. So
we are very similar.
We are very similar in that. So to me, so look, I am in a field where all of us are sitting on the shoulder or standing on the shoulders of giants. I named a few. I said Laplace, Newton, von Karman. These are all giants in the field. We have taken, or the knowledge we have today is something that has come from them. It's not something, and I am adding, I have no illusion that I am only adding a small, if you look at these giants, what I am contributing is going to be a drop in that great ocean, right? So if you go with that humility, or whatever you want to call that, if you have that at the back of the mind, then everything falls in place. I still want to do, I'm passionate about what I want to do. There are ideas that I want to pursue. There are new things that I want to do. I'll keep doing that. But I am not looking for any validation, if you want to use that word.
It is that.
So I personally feel that these awards and every fora that I go to, it's my personal opinion that nobody should apply for these things. It should be a recognition granted from the other side. They say they look around and, data, we are talking about data science. My institute gathers a lot of data of what every faculty does. And similarly, the societies do. I'm sure they can look at the data and say, this year we are going to pick the following guys, and then say we are going to honor him.
One must not need to apply for
that. So
absolutely
that is my philosophy. And it's interesting, several colleagues, I'm fortunate that many colleagues in my department have that kind of view also. But to each his own. I'm not trying to be judgmental here. If somebody wants to do this, needs that validation, that's there. But I don't want to be told that, I am categorized as someone who doesn't go after these and doesn't seek validation as a negative thing. That's just me.
I agree with you.
That's basically it.
One of the things that you mentioned, the NPTEL, right? I think it said it's totally
transformed this country.
Free.
Yes, it's completely free.
I'm touching upon that because I'm inspired by that. I'm also inspired by what Huberman says that, zero cost information regarding science to people. And that's one of the reasons why we are doing this podcast. We are not looking at it as a monetary kind of thing in that sense. we are spending money, using money. Spending is the wrong word. Using money to make these recordings available. And primarily because we want general public to be better informed. And I think it's, when I look at it, the other day I was saying that, money is a creation of men, of human beings.
Right.
And our dear friend, I shared it with him also, R.U. Srinivas. He said, this statement that you made is keeping me up. So I said, which one? He said, human beings are the only ones that have to pay to live on this planet. Right? I had made that statement that human beings are the only ones that need to pay to live on the planet. Yes. Show me another species that pays in money to live on the planet. Everything just does what it's its nature, what is its role that it's supposed to do. From the bacteria to the virus to the insect to the elephant to the tree to everything, the birds, everything, fishes. They just do what they're supposed to do. Right? Human beings are the only ones that have now conflated monetary value to everything. And they need to pay. We need to pay. So I think therefore this recognition, validation, being top of the heap, all of that takes a huge, bigger than life kind of role. Come back to the ego question. For parents, for children, right? Within IIT itself, there are, whether we like it or not, there are these classifications of this course is better, this course is not better. Our other classmate who is now the professor at IIT Bombay, their computer science department is regarded the best. Right? It used to be IIT Madras a while ago, if memory serves me right. Somewhere they've been doing a lot of things, and IIT Bombay is considered the best in computer science, right? Why is there this kind of I understand the social, when I wear the social scientist hat, I understand that it is depending on demand supply, what has the greatest potential for growth. Again, coming back to this, right? Kasu panam duddu money, right? And I'm asking, why is there even today, even in an organization like the institution like IIT, is there a classification of which is great, which is not great within IIT?
No, we don't sit and think within the IIT system that computer science is greater than mechanical engineering or electrical. All people who have the experience know that all are equally important.
Absolutely.
So, you and I are recording using an electrical gadget, but that has to be manufactured.
Correct.
By a mechanical engineer.
Correct.
This computer has to be manufactured by a mechanical engineer.
Correct.
There has to be a road for me to come over here that is done by a civil engineer.
Correct.
Everyone has a role.
Absolutely.
That we know.
Correct.
Okay. The unfortunate thing is that the money.
Yeah.
That is where the distinction has come.
Yeah.
A computer scientist gets paid more than a mechanical or a civil engineer.
Again, is this to do with what is regular tech and what is deep tech kind of differentiation? Is it the what do you call it? The allure of something that is perceived to be elite?
I mean, I really don't know. It is like, I'm not an economics guy to give you a sharp answer as to what drives the salary of a computer science guy to be more. I don't know. There can be several reasons. One, if I look at, say, for example, I take a, hardcore mechanical engineering company like a Tata Motors or a TVS Motor. There's a lot of investment in terms of a land that they have to buy. They have to set up a factory. They have to put in a lot of money, crores and crores of rupees to set up the facility and then turn around. And you're looking at a product where the profit is not going to be exceedingly high.
Yeah.
Right? The growth is going to be if they actually touch double digits, they must be, having parties saying that, oh, this year we grew by 10%. That's one of the reasons. As I said, I'm just, putting out some reasons for that. So with such a large capital investment and a profit which is not, 30%, 40%, some of these, IT companies and, computer science companies make profits which are in that scale, which it's also possibly a maturity of the industry. Mechanical engineering, civil engineering have been in existence for a lot longer time. So maybe a more mature industry is not giving you the return. So they can't afford to pay or give pay hikes to the level that is possible that may be one reason. It could be a demand supply. Yeah. I told you AI is growing. So that means somebody wants to get into the AI business, and if you want the best brains, I have to go bid and get the best fellows. Right? May not happen with mechanical or civil engineering to that same extent. So there's a lot of factors, but the ranking that you are talking about happens on the outside because of this, primarily, I think, driven by the money that someone makes. Right? Because I have had parents call. I have been part of the placement and internship, cells in the IIT system. So, so there is a certain, so somebody in computer science got this job which pays X salary. Why is my son not able to find that kind of salary? And then we have to explain, look, your son has got a very good placement, based on whatever discipline that they are in. This is one of the top placements, but you can't compare with that because you cannot expect, and you cannot expect an engineer to be paid like a lawyer, on the other hand. So these things, there are economics to this, and as I said, I don't understand or pretend to understand why these things are. So the hierarchy primarily, I think, comes from not that computer science is more important, therefore students want to do it. It is just that today computer science jobs are paying a lot more than what, and definitely electrical engineering jobs also tend to pay a little better than what the mechanical engineering or civil engineering jobs pay. So therefore it is driven by more the monetization of that discipline rather than anything. But if I run into my computer science colleague, he doesn't walk around saying I am better than you, right? There's no such thing, because with time you know that.
So it's the hype from the outside world.
Yes. As far as and it is not just hype. It is the way the economic situation is. So therefore, the ranking happens based on that economic situation. Not that it's not based on importance. So I tell people. So you are just talking that it is too cold here. So I tell students, just to demonstrate to you that mechanical engineering is there everywhere around you, not just mechanical engineering, everything. I turn off the AC, that too in Chennai, in this heat, if I turn
Please
off.
Don't.
So you see, you think mechanical engineering is not important, let me turn off the AC. And in about 10 minutes, you will say, okay, mechanical engineering is very... It's all a matter of where you are in what situation to say that is correct.
Reminds me of that joke, right? Various parts of the body.
Right.
Fighting to find out who's the boss.
Exactly. These all work. So nothing is, everything is important today. In fact, a mechanical engineer has to know a reasonable amount of electrical, base level of electrical engineer. And today the challenge the electronics industry faces in miniaturization is a mechanical engineering heat. The ability to dissipate heat from small, tiny electronics is what is limiting the progress there, right? So which means they need a mechanical engineer to tell them, how can I dissipate this? How can I make it more? So the evolved electrical engineer will know that a mechanical engineer is important. To make that chip, I am there. You need me, and vice versa, right? For me to, do all the fancy computations that I want to do with my mechanical engineering when I design a car, I want to look at the aerodynamics of flow over that. I want to do this computation rapidly. I need the electronics guy to make me that computer hardware, and I need the computer science guy to write me very efficient software so that I can solve that problem. So it is all interconnected as far as the disciplines are concerned. We all know that, but it is the outside world, of course, hyped by the media, and they come to town whenever these results come out, either the placement or the JEE thing comes, and they start to, put these stories out. But
so, which brings me to a very interesting question for you. What is the most interesting project, real life project that you have worked on that has given you immense satisfaction?
Okay, there are several, but the one...
Yeah, talk about one of them, because I know you can keep talking.
No.
I'd like you to pick something that's close to your heart and speak about it.
So the one that, which is also a long-term project, was my project with Boeing. So it started soon after I came back. I have a good friend. I mentioned him a little before I pulled out his name, Jerry Farstead. So we were doing PhD together. So he was at Boeing, and then he said, some of the things that you were doing for PhD, I think we can use this in Boeing. And so we started a conversation. I was visiting the US in summer of '98. And then he said, come over, let's have a chat. And the idea kind of germinated, and then we started working on it. About a decade later, I'm not saying it because I want to make this thing, but the satisfaction is that what we developed, and I would say we because it's not just me. There was Jerry, there is another great engineer / human being, Dave Carlson. The three of us have contributed equally in developing this, and today that particular tool that we have developed is used to qualify aircraft engines for putting on a plane. And we have worked across, this has been developed across several platforms. For those who are not familiar, we started with the 777, I think -200 or 300, I don't recall. So with that engine, then we did the 787, which is the first composite airplane that flew, and a 747-400, which is was the next project. And unfortunately, the one that is in the news, not because of the engine, but for other reasons, is the 737 MAX. So these are 4-5 engine platforms across which this tool has been used to basically do the design. So that the fact, because for an academic, primarily, as you said, you introduced that I do teaching and do research or whatever, this gives us greater satisfaction that, I'm actually made a...
And you're learning all the time.
Yes, and I made a difference to that product, to qualify that product so that it can be fitted in the aircraft and it can fly. I made a little contribution there. It takes much more to make that fly, but I have played a part in it is what gives me satisfaction. One of those.
I want you to share a little of the Mridangam project that you did, because that is something that is close to my heart. I got to know some fascinating things about the Mridangam, an instrument that I used to play, I aspire to play again. So I'd like to hear a little about what you did there.
That came from a chance interaction. So, I don't even know, last week I was giving a lecture on the Mridangam. We have a music course at IIT Madras. It's called Science of Musical Instruments. It's something that a few colleagues got together who are all passionate about these things. We should teach them. So we have a course which many of us give lectures in. So this getting into Mridangam was about 7 or 8 years ago. I ran into one of the most accomplished gentlemen. He was a DST secretary and also happened to be the elder brother of my colleague, Dr. T. Ramasamy, who was also CLRA director way long ago. But the more important thing, he was the scientific advisor to the PM. So this is the kind of gentleman that we are talking about. So he had some interest in this, looking at the Mridangam in a scientific way. And having come from CLRA, he got hold of a few scientists, and along with one Umayalpuram Shivaraman, they started looking at this. But then he was actually when he came to campus, he used to stay with his brother, and then when they were walking, one of my senior colleagues, Professor Narayanan, and he used to walk together. And then he said, you know what, Dr. Ramasamy wants to meet us. He wants us to take this thing forward. So we had a meeting with him, and then he said, look, you guys are working in vibration and acoustics. I think there's a lot to do in this. So I said, okay. And that is how I got into it. But for Dr. Ramasamy, he may not remember, but that is how he was instrumental in saying, okay, why don't you look at this? And then, okay, I put a student and said, look, do you know music? He said, no, sir. Good. We too don't know music. Let's get into this. So we got into it, and we looked at what, interestingly, the beauty of this was that we found that after 1954, nobody had looked at it scientifically within the country, right? Especially the mridangam. Although, this is another thing, the tabla has been studied, but not by Indians.
You also mentioned the similarities between the dholak and
yes,
and all of.
We found out that, so we got into, so the very, very interesting aspects in terms of history, the innovativeness of our ancestors in making these, mridangam and whatever. So we got into that. And one of the things is actually Sir C.V. Raman had, in 1934, had said, I'm sure you guys know, most of you would have noticed that the mridangam, tabla, all of them have a black patch.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas the Western drums don't have anything. It's just a pure drum. Of course, there are Indian drums also which don't have that, So the question was that Raman asked us, why is this there? Why did they put this? And it turns out, in music, harmonics are very important. That is what is the difference. See, I work in noise. When it is unharmonic is what is noise, and when it is, musical usually has to do with harmonics. And it turns out that this black presence of the black patch on the membrane turns this mridangam or tabla or the pakwaj, which have all these, which have this black patch, into a harmonic instrument, and therefore very musical. Now, today I have all the computing power, the technology to come and understand that. But just think about this. These are all instruments which are several hundred years old. And the interesting thing is, across India, I don't know, it's a nice history question that you can ask us. Where did it start first? Did it start in the south? And then did it go to the north? Or was it the other way?
Itihasa says Nandi played it first.
Yeah, that is true. But where Nandi means, Kailasa is what we will start. Then it came from north. We don't know. So, it's just from a history perspective also, there are very interesting questions. Nevertheless, there is a unity in technology. What everybody figured out is that if I put this black patch on the tabla, on the pakwaj, on the mridangam, it makes it a beautiful musical instrument, right? So we took, we now scientifically established what Raman had done some experiments, but now we have simulation tools. So I have gotten into simulating this. I have gotten into, we have now, so the next step is, as an engineer, now I want to re-engineer them. Because if you sit with the makers of this mridangam, and we have, I had a very nice student, Suraj, who was fortunately very musically inclined and tremendously enthusiastic. So we used to go sit with this mridangam maker, and he will consider some of the requests that we used to make as heresy. Sir, this all we should not do, sir. So, no, we are scientists, no, this will not sound very well. You should not do this. No, you please do this. So then he will do. And he used to come and tune it for us, sit in the lab for hours. And then he got involved also. He was very curious.
The other thing that you mentioned during this period was that I know this is, it might be a little controversial what I'm going to say now, but the intent is to make sure that it is about peace, harmony and all of that, that most of the mridangam makers follow a different religion.
Yes.
Than what is expected, right?
Absolutely. It is very, very interesting. I don't know why it is so, but irrespective of whether you look at Tanjavur or Chennai or whatever it is, the Christian community has taken to making this mridangam for whatever reason, and they make wonderful.
So this redesign that you're talking about, I'm seeing some mridangams which don't have the wrap, the leather wrap that I have on my mridangam, right? And I'm seeing some fancy things there, some metal.
Yes, so we are moving towards that. I don't know whether it is being done scientifically, but there's nothing that says I can't modify that. If I have a ear for music, I can make those changes. People are trying. There are a lot of people who have a lot of enthusiasm. Our Vidwan Shivaraman himself has, you should admire for someone steeped in tradition that he has been willing to explore. He has had a glass mridangam, the shell to be made out of glass.
Normally it's made out of the jackfruit
tree. So he has got it made out of fiberglass. He has got it made out of glass. And so he's willing to experiment. So there's a lot of things. So what I wanted to bring into this was, as an engineer, the thing is that, as you said, this is a dying art. The art of making mridangam. I want to make it into the science of making mridangam or engineering a mridangam, so that, it is very difficult for the kids of these makers to take this up because A, it is very, very laborious and the returns are not there. So why would somebody, want to continue this? Traditionally, the families have, the sons take it up, and then, their sons take it up. That is how this goes. In fact, it may be controversial, but there is a book by T.M. Krishna called Sebastian and Sons. It's a must read if you really want to know the history, the way the mridangam is made, and the tradition behind how the community got involved into making these. Very well researched and very well thought out book. So my efforts are, there are 2-3 things that strike me. See, the mridangam and similarly the veena, all of these things are very difficult to carry. Mm-hmm. More so the veena. Even the mridangam, my son, by the way, plays the mridangam. And so we had a suitcase for him to take it to Hong Kong, a suitcase which only had the mridangam, diagonally placed, and then some clothes to, basically keep it from moving. Transporting this is so the question that we are asking is, can I make a split mridangam, for example, right? So, and that can be assembled quickly, and then I can play, but yet it should sound exactly the same. Right. So these are some of the things that is how I got in, and these are some of the things that I'm chasing right now.
So like in this science fiction movies, you'll come up with a mridangam, you put it into microwave, drop water, and it'll become big kind of thing.
Hopefully not.
Just add water.
Yeah. So I don't know, but it has one thing has led to the other. So because the fundamental thing in all this is the science of acoustics, right? So therefore, I was looking at machines that were making noise. Now I'm looking at instruments that make music. And of course, I am right now working on musical pillars, which are there across many temples in South India. We are particularly focused on 3 temples in Tamil Nadu: Suchindram, Madurai Meenakshi, and Nellaiyappar temple. If you go to Nellaiyappar temple, you will see 40 pillars, all in a particular pattern of different cross sections, and you tap these pillars, beautiful notes emerge from these pillars. Right? Everybody talks about Hampi, but these are forerunners to the Hampi musical pillars. And there are many such things in South India that you can come across. And again, there is an interesting history. These sculptors moved from, the Chola Empire, the Pallava Empire, and then eventually to the Vijayanagara, and unfortunately, our tradition of not writing down anything, simply transmitting the knowledge from A to B, from son to father to son, and so on and so forth, is the fact that you can only speculate why they, how did they first of all identify these things, the material, this shape, and the cluster that they have to put into. So we are evolving some theories. So it's very interesting to me. So the question is, a single pillar, if you tap, you build, today, in fact, ASI, Archaeological Society, tried to replace one of these humpy pillars and built it, and you go tap and absolutely nothing comes out of it, right? So you kind of wonder. Then there was an Englishman who thought it was hollowed, which is why it made sound. But then it was not so. It was solid pillars. In fact, he actually cut one of the humpy pillars. The idiot cut the pillars and then found out it was not, because that's the only way hundreds of years ago. For today, you have techniques by which I can scan and say whether it is hollow or not hollow. But unfortunately, that gentleman decided, I'm going to destroy and cut one of these things, and figured out it is not hollow.
Curiosity,
right? So now I'm working on some of these things. So
I think, one ideal trip for me, now that you've spoken about this, is to go to these temples with Chandramouli on one side and Dr. Chitra Madhavan on the other.
On the other side. Yes. That's the best combination. So she can tell the historical aspects of this, and then we can explore the musical science of the music.
I'm going to make sure that, Chitra hears this. I'm going to send it to her and, probably inspire her to say, you know what, I will tolerate you and I'll come along with you to the temples, and, Mauli will probably be the saving grace. So, yeah.
So, you kind of, so these chance meetings kind of, has led me into this domain. So that is how I got into it. And of course, one thing has led to the other. So this is typical, I guess.
Let me come back to the ego question now, finally.
Right.
What advice? And I want you to be absolutely direct. Right. I want this to be available to students, aspiring students who want to get into these organizations, these institutions. More importantly, for parents, caregivers, or people who are pushing these children. What advice, direct advice, would you give them such that that each and every one of them can be the best version of themselves? Because force-fitting a round peg into a square hole hurts both the hole and the peg. Right? What advice would you give? Because I think one of the themes that both you and I completely are in alignment with is there is nothing better or worse than any other.
Yes, absolutely.
No need to compare.
Right.
Yes, monetary and so on and so forth forms, I'm calling it an artificial problem. It doesn't need to be that. Like Nisargadatta said, that there is enough for all if all share. Right? So what's happening is that right now it seems like there is a mad scramble for everybody to be on the top. The problem is that if everybody is on the top, there is nothing below or bottom.
Yes, like what we discussed before. Somebody has to be below, perceived to be below.
Correct.
Whatever. I think there is two things.
So let me rephrase, let me state the question again. Direct advice to the students. Right. More importantly, direct advice, not even suggestion, advice.
To the parent.
Do, don't do.
So I'll start with the parent, because that is where I think, especially in the IIT system, we call them helicopter parents.
Yeah.
Right? I think the parents should let go of trying to realize their dreams through their children.
Vicarious living.
Yes.
They should stop.
So, I wanted to get into IIT. I couldn't get into IIT. My son or daughter should get into IIT. I think this is absolutely ridiculous. Especially when the son or daughter doesn't want to get into IIT or wants to pursue something else. I have had situations where there was a girl who wanted to do law, wound up writing JE because the parents wanted her to write. And unfortunately for her, and she made it and was pressurized into joining this, and then got into a rut where she says, now I have to pay back. You made me come here. I don't want to be here. And then get into a spiral. So this is something that parents should recognize. Best is to, if your child is inclined and wants to, and feels, and that is where, building the trust with the children and having a conversation and saying, do you really want to go to IIT? Yes or no? Right? And I think, unfortunately, as you at the beginning mentioned, there are people now who are putting kids at the 6th standard, 7th standard level where the kid doesn't even know.
I'm like, I just can't understand
the child is not mature enough to even know. I mean, the next thing they probably want to know is, okay, can I go play with my friend or whatever is at the level when you are in 6th and 8th, and you are making decisions for them, which is what unfortunately is driving the system. Why are you making those decisions? Because it is, for some reason, either it is ego, my colleague's son or daughter is studying at IIT, so I will have to study. So the lemming mentality, So what's so great? They should ask the question, okay, are all those people who have come through IIT necessarily are the best by whatever?
Chandrababu's song.
Whatever, are they the best in the world?
Chandrababu's song.
Yeah. So, true. Right? Are they the best in the world? Not necessary. Yes, some of the IIT products, have gone on to do well, right? That's why everybody outside that, right, is about the same chance of an IITian making it big as, my wife used to be upset about the IIM guys, probably because she saw that in her corporate life, So then she said, so I asked her, how does it feel to be married to an IIT?
You're quoting
I
disaster.
didn't have Fortunately, I was only half as arrogant as that's what she used to, the word that was used. So I think it is this, parents have this innate desire, I don't know, the ego,
they mean well.
They mean well. They think somehow getting into IIT, what I want to burst the bubble is that is not the end of the world. Getting into an IIT does not solve, it doesn't guarantee anything. It requires, after that, hard work forever, right?
Absolutely.
It doesn't stop anywhere, learning forever.
Anything.
So anything, right? So it's not just, and then heaven will not fall if the kids don't get into it. There are so many other, I can understand this in my days when, people were either becoming an engineer or a doctor. If you took science, and I think CA was the third one, so there were three. Basically, if you were in science, it was either engineer or doctor, or if you were not in science, then it was essential.
I wanted to be a chef.
Today, there is it is a lot easier to go and tell that and become a chef than it was, I think, in the 80s when we graduated from school.
I think it's also a question of the socio-economic, cultural
milieu. Yes, a lot of things have changed. This country has, changed tremendously in the last 40 years. But I can understand at my time somebody saying you have to get into, one of these institutions if you want to, have a well-set career or whatever, because probably opportunities were also not there. Today, it doesn't make sense at all. There are thousands of avenues. I think parents should recognize, first find out what does your, what is it that your son or daughter wants to do. Have a conversation. I think that's the advice that I would give.
And for that, make it safe for your children to
be able to come and
their mind.
Exactly. Yes.
Don't be a helicopter parent. Don't think that you are going to push them into. No, just let them be, let them blossom, and they will do well.
They should have the courage to say, no, I don't want to write the JEE. Right? The children should be able to say that. So that is the kind of environment.
Now, let me play the devil's advocate. Right. You are also saying that, the child is wanting to play. Where do I draw the line? The distress to eustress kind of thing. Where do I draw the line as a parent?
No, I think, no, it also depends on, what has happened is that because I don't raise them, I'm kind of making the decisions for them all the time. It also becomes difficult for that 17-year-old to be able to make that decision, right? Because you're not inculcated that independence in your child. There are parents who would, I have relatives in my own circle who will chaperone their kids not send them alone in an auto. I will send somebody in the auto, take them to the class, and bring them back from the class. Such a kid doesn't develop the ability to think independently because everything is controlled by the parents in his life, right, or her life. So it is difficult for them to make that decision. So the environment has to start early, right? So right from when they are 6th or 7th, they're reasonably old, you start giving them the independence and the boundaries to be defined, right? And it still is difficult for a kid, but I think the other thing that the parent should also be able to tell them, there's nothing wrong in failing.
Absolutely.
Right? So at this point of time, with whatever is there, the kid says, okay, this is the direction that I want to go. But it can be reversed. There's nothing like, okay, 3 years down the line. So in fact, one of my, I remember visiting my wife's cousin, and she was saying, the next door fellow, after doing 4 years of engineering, today he is doing visual communication. Can you believe that? I said, I'm actually quite happy that the fellow realized after doing 4 years of engineering, that's not what he wants to do.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And he has now discovered in that 4 years that visual communication is what he wants to get into. Beautiful. There is no wastage. There's, people say, I have lost 2 years. There's no loss. Life is too long, There's only... So look at the experience that he used that 4 years to understand that is not what he wants to do. And he had the courage to say, see, there are many people who can't get out of this. You will probably see, in the corporate world, people who will sit there and say, oh, I should have probably done that. Why not? Right? They didn't have the courage to do that. But this kid had the courage to say to his parents, look, I don't think engineering is for me. And, during these 4 years, I figured out these are the things that drive me, and enrolled for a visual communication and is probably doing very well. I'm sure he is doing very well after that, right? So the parent should also tell the child that, hey, what do you want to do? And also keep support the child, saying that this is just a beginning. You're making a decision. All of us make decisions. I have made thousands of decisions which have turned out to be wrong after a while. That's in hindsight. At that point, with whatever data that you have to make a choice. Sometimes the emotion overrides your brain at that point of time, and you make choices, and you realize later it is wrong. But then you course correct, and then go. So there's always a way to, go back. Today, it's all the more possible. Maybe it was not so 40 years back that fear of failure was very high. Today, you don't have to. So parents need to tell the children that, look, find out what drives you, and they may not have the maturity to say this is what is... See, I always tell the students who come to me, I tell them, what do you not like? I say, sir, you are asking me, what do I not like? I said, that's actually very easy to come up with, I will, because my old manufacturing teachers will be very upset with me. When I was a student, I didn't like manufacturing courses, right? So somebody asked me, I was very clear I didn't want to pursue manufacturing as a research field, right? This much I was clear. But I was not very clear whether, what else will I do? All the other options seemed equally okay to me. So very often it's easy for us to look at what we don't like and clear that out. But what we like is very difficult question to answer. So you say, okay, I like this, let me try this. And after a while you get more data and you say, maybe it's not as much as what I thought it is. And I correct and say, okay, let me go try something else. And that is how you figure out. In fact, if you look at some of the most interesting people in the world have, kind of a tortuous path to where they are.
You're talking to one of them now.
Yeah. I mean, GS is CA. After that,
I did multiple
things. And
this
then,
is my fifth.
So in that sense, I'm a boring guy.
You are far from boring.
No. In that sense, if you look at the career thing, I have been very focused and stayed put in one thing all the time. Need not be, because, I was just looking at, yesterday I was looking at a profile, one of the researchers who is coming to us as a neurosurgeon, English literature. His first qualification is English literature. Then he somehow developed an interest in biology and then said, let me start something in biology. One thing led to the other. Today is a neurosurgeon. Right? See, this is what in the US,
apparently family astrologer told my parents that I'd be a neurosurgeon. And they pushed me into biology, right? And the one subject that I did not like was biology.
Anyway, so I think one of the things which I liked about the US was that one has the freedom, to make those mistakes, figure out what they want to do. The children are empowered to make that decision, So I remember I was a TA in one of these courses. This guy was saying, so he was in mechanical engineering. So I said, how did you arrive at mechanical engineering? No, I just used to, pull aside, my dad gave me a second-hand car. I started pulling out and, fiddling with the transmission, fiddling with the engine and stuff like that. So I thought, you know what, it's very hard. It's not, that I found out that's a lot easier, but trying to design that engine and transmission and all that is very challenging. Then I said, okay. But then I figured out, okay. So after a while, I was his TA and then we were having this conversation in the canteen we met. Then a year later, I said, where are you? Now I am in aerospace engineering. So I said, wow. So I thought maybe I'll give it a shot in aerospace. He said, man, it's very hard. And 6 months later, I saw him. He says, I'm training to be a pilot. I figured out that is what I want to do. So they're going through that cycle. So the beauty in the US is that, you may say parents are letting go of their kids at 18 and say the world is yours, go away. But that freedom is given. Yeah. And the message that is given to them is, look, you go figure out what you want to do. You will fail. You will have, but ultimately everybody sorts themselves out. What they sort themselves out into is their own thing, right? So I think that, so they need not be paranoid about everybody. I think will turn out to be what they want to be, right? So I don't think there is eventually they will all do what they want to do. But we have to give them the space to figure that out. They may not know that when they are 17. They may get into it. I got into it without knowing, to be honest. So somebody asked, how did you get into mechanical engineering? Because that's what my rank got me, right? So that's it. But then you get into it, you immerse, and then after about 4 or 5 years, I said, you know what, I like this. And then there is a focus that comes in and says, no, I'm going to be a focused mechanical engineer, right? So then I've continued that. Now, there are a lot of friends of mine who said, this is not what I want to be, and strayed away from this, right? So all these things have happened. So, and possibly 90% of them have strayed away from mechanical engineering, and only about 10% of us are still doing mechanical engineering. So I think if they look at, and if the parents look at themselves, and if they don't need to look far, because as you said, if you look at yourself and where you are to what you got trained initially with, then they would pass on that message to the children, right? That is the message that they need to give the children.
Right. There's no right or wrong.
Yes.
Allow people to blossom at their pace in something that really gets their juices flowing.
Right.
And nothing is the end of the world.
Yes.
Except the end of the world.
Yes.
And we don't know when that's going to happen. So therefore, we will live on hope. Yeah. And we will say that this is what it is. One very interesting thing that you once on our beach walk, you mentioned to me, was that when you look for your masters or especially for your PhD students whom you're going to be guiding, you look primarily for their value systems, their commitment and discipline. Yes. Right? And I was like, I did a double take. And I said, very interesting, because that's also something that I'm very particular about. That when I'm looking at somebody, there has to be a value connect. Is this person willing to do the work? Are they willing to be honest with me? Will they tell me the truth as it happens? Right? And therefore, a question I'd ask myself is, who should I be such that this person feels safe to tell me the truth? Because most times people lie because they're afraid. So they're afraid of the consequences and the person, how they would react. Right? Your statement was, I look for values and ethics in all the students that I take on. I know what you said, but I want you to say why you said it, because I heard it, I was just, wow.
See, that especially for a PhD student, it's a very, very tough journey doing a PhD. It's probably one of the most difficult things in academics that you can do. I'm sure there are other things which are equally difficult. Why? Because you are starting with something where you don't know what you're seeking. There is some prior knowledge, and then you are on a journey into the unknown. So there are going to be periods where nothing will move. You're making no progress. You're probably regressing, coming down a few steps before you move. So you need more than having a great knowledge of the subject matter. What is important is the kind of person you are. Your value system will build. Ethics is important because, generally speaking, it is important. Ethics is broadly required, especially in our field, because we have to acknowledge, that when we are trying to come up with, as I said, we are standing on the shoulders of giants, and it is very important that to say that I have come here thanks to these people, and you have to acknowledge that. So therefore, it is unethical to say, oh, I have discovered this or I have invented this. Everything that you see today, somebody has done, and then you are saying, I'm making improvements to this. So that acknowledgement, that ethic is very important. The value system enables this student to be able to handle times when things are not going their way. That is the value system that helps them. They could be very knowledgeable, but when they are stuck, it doesn't help that they are very knowledgeable. But the fortitude that they have built, their ability to handle tough situations, which is the ability to handle stressful situations and come out of it. Take responsibility to come out of that. That is what is important in a student. So the questions that I have, I'm more interested to know where they came from. What is the kind of family they came from? Have they gone through any difficulties? So of course the student will be puzzled. I'm not asking about what grade he got. And so I start with them saying very simple, you are selected as a PhD student at IIT Madras. That means your technical aspects are all sorted out. We feel that you are good enough to be a PhD student here. Let me get that out of the way. And for some reason, you have chosen that you think it's going to be interesting for you to work with me. And you have come here. So I'm more interested in knowing the background of the student, what is the kind of family. And many of them, interestingly, come from, the current PhD student that I have lost his father at a very early age, right? Raised by a mother in a village, taking care of, the land. So the kind of learnings that fellow will have. And then, he has gone on a scholarship somehow, from that village, gone on to, study in Punjab, come back. And then he says, no, I want to pursue a PhD. I want to, go back and do certain things in this. So in this conversation, these are things that come out. So then I say, okay, this is the kind of student that I want to have, right? Because they can handle, they have seen adversity in life. Not everything has been a bed of roses for them. They have overcome adversity in life. They have a very strong value system. For him, his village, his mom, everything is extremely important. And he has not forgotten that. In fact, it's very amazing that he is now giving back. He has started some of these things where he goes. He has created these teaching centers through which he is, doing a lot of things. So this is the kind of guy that I want as a PhD student, right? So I can train him. the what he doesn't know in terms of the technical knowledge, I can impart those skills because he has the ability to work hard and come there. If you don't want to work hard, it's difficult to get a PhD. So these are the kind of values that I look for. So the conversation is of course we make mistakes, right? So you think that somebody has it after a few conversations but it doesn't turn out to be that way, or things change in their lives which make them move away from that. So that always happens. But to me, that is more important than looking at their technical skills. Once they are in, of course. In the interview, of course, I'm looking at whether the fellow has certain minimum level, basic level of technical skills to be able to take up, a PhD program. But once they are in, it's something else that makes them a successful PhD scholar, right? So, which is true in everything. Ultimately, the successful people, the so-called successful people, are successful not because of their knowledge, but because of all these traits. Every single person, whoever you take, whether it is Bill Gates or then the famous names or whatever, coming down to where we are today is because of these things that we have done. It is not because that I know more than, I'm sure there are a lot of people who know more than what I know, right? But may not be doing the same things that I am doing. And that is because of what the other intangibles that I have brought into the table. Right? So yes, that is important.
Lovely. You and I can keep talking, right?
Yes.
So at some point of time, we'll come back again. I'm going to ask you one last question. And this is a question that I ask a lot of people, and I definitely intend asking every single guest on the podcast this question. What one sentence will sum up at the end of your life the absolute ideal life that you could have lived?
Good question. One sentence that would
encompass the most ideal life that you could have lived.
What is ideal?
I don't know. You tell me, according to you.
Well, yeah, according to me, it's very simple. I look at, or rather, what gives me satisfaction is how many lives I've been able to touch in some way or the other, right? In fact, it's a nice. So somebody said, see, in our domain, we go by these metrics saying how many papers have I published, how many patents have I generated. I said, you know what? When I leave this academic position and move on to other things, what I look at is the human resource that I've had the fortune of generating. And all those students whom I've taught one class, and more importantly, these PhD and master students who have spent a considerable amount of time with me, right? These guys have gone on and are doing things. Some of them are doing extremely well by whatever markers that you have, and I am happy to have been a part of their journey somewhere along the line. Right? So this is what I take away, the fact that I could be in academics. One of the reasons I have been in academics is that I am able to touch in some way somebody's life, hopefully for the better. And as I said, some may not feel that way. I'm okay with that, right?
So let me come back to that one sentence.
So the one sentence
that will encompass the most fulfilling life that you could have lived.
Yes, to keep on giving, basically, and touching other people's lives. That is my ideal. In whatever way, I have done it through academics, but I'm doing that through other means also.
Lovely. To give and to touch
people's lives
in a positive way.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure I have also touched in negative ways, but hopefully the positives will be much more than the negatives.
And the final, I think,
right. That
can't
is what
do anything about the past.
Right.
From now on, and hopefully the intent is clear.
Yes.
Is to contribute.
Yes.
to give of myself and to make a beautiful
In whatever way I can. Yeah.
Thank you, Molly. I absolutely love talking to you. And I will definitely take a rain check on getting you back here. I know you will not say no. You better not say no. When I call you again, you better not say no. Yeah?
No. Absolutely. There will be no doubt in my saying yes, there's no question.
Right. One of the things that I'm actually looking at is, probably get 2 or 3 of our friends together.
Yeah, that would probably be a nice...
Somewhat conflicting viewpoints as well.
Viewpoints. Nice. Absolutely.
And yet we love each other, respect each other, trust each other, and we look at things completely differently, right? And I think that will make for a good, interesting conversation, right? I don't know whether the viewers will like that, but we can have a truckload of fun.
No, but I think in a way it is also an interest. So you can have different streams, but they are all going to converge ultimately at the sea, right?
Absolutely.
So you all flow differently and then ultimately converge. The destination is the same, right?
Absolutely. So we'll wrap this episode of the HappYness Helix podcast with that last question, and I hope you enjoyed it. Kindly share it with others, and do me a favor, just share it at least one person whom you think will benefit. One student or one set of parents, caregivers, school teachers, who might benefit from hearing very sage wisdom that Professor Chandramouli has shared. And the intent, as always, is to make the lives of all of those who listen to this, who watch this, a teensy-weensy bit better, because we have shared it. It's not being done commercially at all, and I hope it's never done commercially. And I request you to subscribe on whichever platform you're listening to this. Kindly feel free to share it. And as always, what I've learned from my coach, my mentor, Kichu Krishnan, there's no copyright, just copy it right. Use whatever you've heard here to make the lives of those people who are in touch with you a little better. Thank you very much. Keep smiling, stay happy, stay safe, and just be. Thank you.